Okay, so we're back, and now we're going to be talking about statutes. So, statutes are, again, one of our sources of law. Synonyms, legislation, code, um, laws that are enacted by a legislative body from our lawmakers that we elect. And then the laws are passed and then they are codified and organized by topics. Um, most of your environmental law actually starts with a statute, things like Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, CERCLA, RFRA, RCRA, TSCA, Endangered Species Act. Um, so it's a pretty good place to look at. Let me see. The EPA website actually talks about a lot of the environmental laws. It just kind of gives you summaries and it might link you out to them. So, laws and regulations right here. We can go laws and executive orders, and they're just going to kind of give you summaries of them here, which is pretty good. Summaries of environmental laws and executive orders. Look at all these, a lot of environmental statutes there. So, it's a big source of environmental law. I guess that's the bottom line. Even though we have a lot of federal laws, states can also regulate the environment. They would have to be more stringent than the federal. They couldn't be less stringent. We have state laws. So even if you look in your textbook, what page is that on? Page 7 is an example of a state law. It's the Minnesota Endangered Species Act. You can't take, transport, or sell or possess any species on the endangered species list. So let's go. Here's our Illinois legislation. And from here, in our Illinois General Assembly site, these are under the environmental safety section. These are all our Illinois environmental laws: pesticides, groundwater, solid waste. So anyway, there's a lot of statutes, I guess, is my bottom line there. So how do we search for statutes? If you are on something like the Illinois legislative site, you would look at the topics. So here, right? So let me, if I can hit back. If I go back to my chapter listing, so they're topically organized in a statute. So under health and safety here, we have our, you kind of have to browse through, and then you see environmental safety, and then from there, you can browse. So that's one way of doing it. Also on this Illinois legislative site, we can search. So I can say I'm interested in anything on pesticides. Type in pesticide and go, and they're going to tell me any Illinois statute that talks about pesticides. So that's kind of a keyword search using these free websites. When you are on a paid database, you will have the actual text of the statute, and then you'll have something called annotations, which are little notes of cases that have interpreted the statutes to help you further your research. So things that are helpful for when you're reading statutes, look at the whole act to see if you're missing anything. Maybe the act has a definition section to tell you, when we're talking about polluter, this is what we mean, or emitter or something like that. I like to, when I have a statutory section, break it out into what I call elements. So here, all the requirements. So, not really what I wanted to do. I don't know, this Litter Control Act. So it will tell you, Here's a definitional section here. Litter means. So those are the definitions of what a litter is. Okay. And this no person shall dump, deposit, throw, discard, whatever. So you would have so many, you can't pollute unless, and then 1, 2, 3. So kind of go through and put out all the additional elements or requirements in like a checklist. So then you can see if your client or the other party has completed all the items in the checklist, then that law applies to them. So I think that's kind of a helpful way of going through statutes. Federal environmental statutes, I just went through them on the EPA page. If you want some more information on that in the textbook on page 14, there's a list of them, like NEPA, Clean Air, Clean Water, CERCLA, which we'll do a lot of them throughout the semester. Places to find environmental laws for federal. I like the Cornell site, law.cornell.edu. It has federal and state codes in there. And you would choose US code. And let me go there. I need to go. All right. law.cornell.edu. Sorry, it was going slow, so I paused it and put you back on. But anyway, on the Cornell site, we have the US code, and you can search by title or by keyword or whatever. So it's a really nice place to get US code. And for state stuff, it links you out to the individual state sites so that you can look at their codes there. So this is all nice because it's free. If you don't have access to Lexis or Westlaw, you can do your research that way. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so that's our stuff on statutes. Okay, and then we start talking about case law. Case law, is judge-made law. You can use, if you have books, you can use a digest to find relevant cases. You can use computer-assisted legal research like Lexis or Westlaw. I really like, oops, is it the next one? Oh, well, I really like Google Scholar, which I think I'm going to get to in a couple of slides. So sorry about that. Okay, so court system, parties have a dispute. One party goes to a trial court, and it goes through a trial, and the judge there's a final judgment. And if one of the parties disagrees with that final judgment, they might file what we call an appeal, right? Request for a higher court to look at it. Must be based on a question of legal error, not a factual error. And it goes up to the appellate court. There's not a trial there. There's just reading of the briefs and an oral argument. And the appellate court panel makes a decision and writes an opinion. So the opinion is what case law is, right? With the reasons for their rulings. And an opinion is what we call precedent, meaning binding. If it's in the same jurisdiction, higher court on the same issue. Okay. Otherwise, it would just be persuasive authority. And then the appellate court would either affirm, so agree with the lower court, reverse the lower court, meaning, not agree, or somehow modify the ruling. If you are a judge who disagrees with the majority opinion, you might write what we call a dissenting opinion. And then a judge who is on that panel and agrees with the outcome but has different reason, they might write what we call a concurrence or a concurring opinion. I think that stuff's on the quiz, so remember that. There's a dissent in here in the textbook on page 19 if you're interested in reading a dissent. People write a dissent because maybe they hope that in the future someone will read it and maybe change the law based on their reasoning. Reading a case. Oh, attached cases, which I probably haven't attached yet. So let's go there. Oh, I know where it is. Sorry about that. I wanted to kind of show you the difference of when you're reading cases, where you're reading it from, and what's available to you. So I got this on Google Scholar, which is really just the actual text of the case for Sierra Club versus Morton. So you'll see, you just have words. So you kind of have to go through this on your own, um, you know, and do your own briefing and your own highlighting. And there's not any editorial enhancement for you here. The other way, if you have access to a paid database, this is the example of what it looks like on Lexis. It's going to look a lot different, even though it's the same case. I would like this to go away. All right, so we have our case. We have things called core terms. We have a case summary. We have head notes, things that make it easier to kind of figure out what this case is about, and helps us in our research. So this is again about standing, right? We were talking about that earlier, and the right to review. So that's just kind of an example. So things you might want to look at are that synopsis, head notes. When you're briefing a case, hopefully you've learned a little bit about briefing cases. You need the facts of the case. You need the legal issues, the rules, right? The standards, either a statute or a case law standard that the judge is applying. And then you look at how the judge applies the facts of the case to the rules of law, which is the analysis or reasoning section, and their holding, which is the answer to the issue questions. So if you are briefing cases, see what your instructor likes, and that is how you can do that. When you're in the real world, if you're briefing cases for an attorney at your firm, figure out what they like. If it's just up to you, figure out what you like. Okay, so Google Scholar is my favorite free way to find environmental case law. So it's scholar.google.com. Okay, I can get here. Scholar.google.com. Oh, if I spelled Google correctly, that would have been much more helpful. Is it going to find it for me here? Google Scholar. Okay, on Google Scholar, you have two options. You can either search cases or search articles. Okay, so say if I go to case law, say I go to federal courts. Sierra Club and Morton, right, using our Boolean connectors there in federal courts, and we'll probably find not just the actual case, but cases that talk about Sierra Club versus Morton. Okay, and this is what I had pulled up was the Google Scholar version. So it's really free, easy way for you to do case law, kind of obviously Google style searching, and you have the full text of the case. Again, the only thing you don't have are those editorial enhancements, but it is free. So it's kind of the best free way to find cases. I think, all right. And we're going to take, we're going to do something else now. Next slide. Here it is. We're going to start talking about a little bit about ethics. So one of the things that I posted in the module here is our Illinois Rule of Professional Conduct regarding confidentiality for attorneys, which then applies to us. So this is something that's very important for us as legal professionals to honor. So the first section of this rule requires, let me see if when this is going to pop up. Here we go. Okay, a lawyer, and this applies to us when we work for lawyers, shall not reveal information relating to the representation of a client unless we have informed consent. So you're almost at a higher standard because you can't ask the client for informed consent. So anything that you hear about your client's case, you can't share outside of the law firm. You can't talk to your mom about it. You can't talk to your significant other about it. You can't talk to your friend about it. So super, super, super important. You can't be chatting about that stuff. And these are exceptions to that, which we're really not going to worry about in cases of, somebody committing a crime or something like that. But a lawyer shall make reasonable efforts to prevent the inadvertent or unauthorized disclosure or access. So that's things like, don't be doing work on a shared Wi-Fi, right? Be careful about when you're sending emails or forwarding emails. You can't forward emails that may be to say opposing counsel that have information that might have confidential client information there. So that's like super, super duper important. So what I want you to do now, that's just one of the rules that we have to abide by, one of our ethical rules. And how does it have it here? It's legal ethics, and I'm sure you've had at least another paralegal course where you talk about legal ethics. It's not morality. It's not like what's ethical to do. Legal ethics are very specific, and there are very specific rules. And as applied to paralegals, there's a couple of things that are super important. And we'll talk about them. The one is you can't practice law, right? So the unauthorized practice of law by a paralegal is very, very serious. But where is this? Boom, 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 boom. I have a little discussion assignment for you guys, which I want you to do now after you turn off this video, which has some lists of ethical requirements of paralegals. Want you to look at that and see which ones you find would be, which one of these ethical requirements would be the most difficult for you to honor and why. So, talk about that. And then later on in the week, you can comment on someone else's. So it's going to be kind of like our standard discussion board type assignment. I have an attachment with these special ethical concerns for paralegals. So I have a paragraph, which one you think is the hardest to meet and how you could overcome that challenge. And then later on in the week, talk about, comment on someone else in the class's post. So on your break from the lecture, I'd like you to work on this week's discussion board on paralegal ethics.